Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur, talking today about digital ID and digital currency. And some of you are going, yay! The convenience. I mean, it is very, very convenient. There's no two ways about it. But on the other hand, do we trust the government with our private information? Of course not. Right? At least, well, some people probably do. I wouldn't, put myself in that category for sure. Our guest today is Sharon Polsky. She is the president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada. And you can check out their website. It'll pop up on the screen there. I don't want to try saying it. It's got too many letters in it. Sharon, good to have you with us.
Lovely to be with you. Thank you.
Well, there's lots to talk about here for sure. Blacklock's reporter broke this story first, I think, and then Conservative MP Michelle Garner-Rempel kind of picked that up in Parliament. So federal regulators said they are working to establish digital credentials for the public without parliamentary go-ahead. So any thoughts on that? Are we all good with that?
Well, you talk about trust, and I mean, our own government has talked very often about how people have lost trust in mainstream legacy media, in federal institutions, in the democratic freedoms that we enjoy. Well, trust is earned, and so I think is distrust, and at this point, it depends which government, I think, because I know when I travel, there's been times I go to Europe and to take the Airbnb, I have to provide a copy of my Canadian information to Airbnb, but to the person in Spain, in France, that I'm renting from, they get a copy of my passport, they get all my tombstone data, they provide it to their government, and I'm okay with that. They've been doing this for a long time. They know what to do with it. I go to Japan. I was invited to speak there. The Japanese government has my fingerprints. They've got my facial picture for facial recognition. I'm fine with that. Am I as fine with the Canadian and American government taking all of that information and exchanging it and doing we don't know what with it? Well, again, it's a matter of trust. When it comes to the convenience that you talked about in the intro, it's really convenient until it's not. And that's the problem. We don't know when it's not going to be convenient. Digital currency, sure, it's when we don't have any power and we don't have access to the digital anything because there's no electricity. What do you do then? It's not like cash.
That's a very good point. And of course, it's a rough world we live in. There are some rogue nations out there, some unfriendly nations. There is technology to, cause electric grids to just black out for a period of time. And, who knows what goes on during that time. Maybe it would be good to have some paper backup ID and all these kinds of things. Just saying. You travel around the world, right? So talking about privacy, you know your stuff very well. That's why they invite you. So how does Canada, I guess, and the U.S., compared to other nations, and again, it seems that, I think there was a G20 meeting a while back, and they're all on board saying we're working together to have this, global digital ID put in place because it's going to be very helpful, between nations and so forth. And I get that. But are we any more or less trustworthy than some of these other nations? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the more important question at this point is, are we sure that our nation is on its own and hasn't been infiltrated? I mean, there's certainly been enough discussion about it, or lots of discussion, nowhere near enough, in Ottawa about foreign interference in our elections and whether there's foreign police on Canadian soil. It's already been admitted. So we have a problem there because when our nation or another nation is exchanging information with one of its allies, one of its partners, that's one thing. They have some control over it. We don't, but the government presumably has. Yeah. When it's another government, when it's an unfriendly adversary, whether it's a nation state or a rogue entity, there's no telling what's going on. And that is a problem for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, can we touch on a little bit on digital currency as well? Again, I'm assuming there's some conveniences with that, but there's certainly some cons with that. Do you want to talk about some of the pros and cons of digital currency?
Well, yeah, we've all been inured. We've been told use digital everything, use a digital wallet. It's much more convenient. You don't have to have a wallet and your cell phone is just in your cell phone. They don't have to take out a wallet or cash or a credit card. Everything's in one place, which is great. Unless you forget your phone or you lose your phone or it suddenly doesn't have power, then what do you do? On the other perspective, though, when it is a centrally controlled digital currency, it's not like you have any control over that. As the name says, it is somebody else. Imagine instead of the Bank of Canada printing currency, hard cash, and then it goes to the bank, it goes to your pocket, it circulates, and at some point they will take a note out of circulation because it's getting ratty. They want to replace it, want to reissue with new pictures, whatever. That's fine. They have to wait till that dollar bill comes back into their hands. With digital currency, they have access to all the currency. And if you've seen movies like Changing Lanes or there's so many that used to be considered sci-fi, and they're not. With a click of a button on a keyboard, you can be disappeared.
Yeah.
Your entire financial history can be gone. And then what do you do? Because, I mean, we hear now this new term of being debanked, where a bank says, we're closing your account. Why? No reason given. We're closing your account. But what happens to my money? We'll cut you a check. Okay, but I can't get another bank account to honor it, to open an account for me. And they just shrug and go, well, that's too bad. But you no longer are banking with us. And that's happened to all sorts of people, including politicians. So what do you do?
Can they be forced to? Could they be forced to give it to you in cash or in gold or something like that? Precious. I'm like, because if you can't cash it anywhere, then you're out your money, and that money is still in their bank.
That's right. And there's huge leverage because you no longer have access to your money. So how do you pay your rent, your mortgage, your food? How do you put gas in the tank? And we have to be very careful. I mean, yeah, there's convenience to everything digital, but on the other hand, you have to look at the risk. And it's not tinfoil hat stuff. There's already major banks in Australia that no longer accept checks or cash because apparently fewer than 10% of people were dealing in cash. It was more bother than it was worth to them. So they just stopped. There's no law that says cash must be available or honored.
Okay. Yeah, to me, I just kind of get the creepy's going up my spine here, and I guess that's why some people are, setting aside some, reserves in silver or gold and so forth of something of value, if this ever does happen down the road. And again, maybe we're overreacting, I don't know, but like you say, there are cases of this happening already. It gives the government an immense amount of control. Again, we saw this, of course, with the truckers' convoy where bank accounts were frozen, and in some cases very unjustly, maybe in all the cases. That's a whole other show, but it makes me very uncomfortable with any government having that much control over us. So that would just be multiplied, I think, with digital ID and digital currency. So So again, how do we prevent this from happening, I guess? It depends, I suppose, how many people are going to say no to this. But if it's going that way, is there some way we can do something to make the pendulum start swinging the other way?
Talking about it is important. Getting people aware that this stuff actually is going on. And I mean, some people, I talk to them, and it's like, yeah, this stuff again, yeah. They don't care. It's not on their radar. They're busy, focused on their lives, on their day-to-day, get the kids ready for school, get to work, meet their daily commitments. This stuff is beyond them, and it's also not taught in school. So not only do the teachers and the parents and the kids not know about it, The lawmakers and the bureaucrats don't really understand what's going on. And if they don't, then they have to rely on the people who are the experts, the vendors. And the vendors of this technology aren't really concerned about your privacy or mine. They're concerned about getting their commission, getting their sales targets met. Very different.
Yeah. Well, for sure, yeah. Now, in China, of course, I mean, it's more of a totalitarian kind of a government situation there. I think they're already using a lot of digital ID things. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but and I'm told they have a sort of like a social credit. I mean, you got to buy into the whole Communist Party, way of doing things, right? And and if they're keeping track of you and you're not scoring enough of these social points, they can actually apparently dock you or punish you in some way, withhold certain privileges. Can they limit, where you shop, what you buy, these kinds of things? Where's that at?
Well, we saw that come to light, especially during COVID. Although some media said, no, that's all fake news. Where in China, apparently people had to show their phone with either a green, yellow, or red QR code. If it was green, you could come and go as you wish. Yellow, you have to check with the authorities. Red, don't even bother going out and trying to get out of your apartment. And I look at that and it's reminiscent of Germany 80 years ago when they required people to wear, and everybody knows about the yellow star, but there was an entire library of different symbols that people had to wear so that they visibly could be identified, whether they were Jewish or a political dissident or a Roma, a gypsy. It's horrifying to see history being repeated. And of course, some media said, no, it's fake news. Don't worry, it's not real. But I've got a friend, she was actually born in China. She's a Canadian citizen. She came as a child, very young child, and she's a Canadian citizen, and had a conversation with her a few years ago. We're sitting having a cup of coffee, and I said, so this Chinese social credit system, is it real? And she said, I have to be careful what I say. My grandparents are still there. My grandmother is about to die, and her grandfather has since died. But she said, I have to be very careful because what I say here, if it's not the right thing, if I step out of line, my grandparents, they will be made to suffer. I asked her something very similar on text about 3 months ago. She's on Apple, I'm on Apple, it's end-to-end encrypted, and now, of course, the FBI has said everybody should make sure they use end-to-end encrypted for communications because they know for sure that the North American telecommunication systems have been infiltrated by Chinese and foreign adversaries. But I asked her on Apple iMessage, again, is this social credit stuff real? And instantly she responded, it's not real. When someone says something and it just comes across as too fast, too sharp, she had to say that.
She's looking over her shoulder going, I think somebody might be listening in on this one.
That's right. Face-to-face was very different.
Oh man, that's a wake-up call. And again, you mentioned there these Chinese underground police stations set up as something else across Canada. All kinds of questions surrounding that. I don't think we've come to the bottom of that. And, it's an aggressive country, China. I mean, they mean business. They don't fool around, right?
They don't, but either does our government. Don't kid yourself. Our government, the Five Eyes, they're all employing surveillance. I mean, look at the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Canadian government has distributed of our tax dollars to municipalities for the communities, for the Safer Communities initiatives. And what do the municipalities use it for? Very often for surveillance technology. But we saw in New York City with the murder of the CEO the other day, that with all the cameras, it doesn't stop crime.
Wow. So is it worth it, right?
To who? It's a matter of perspective. Is it worth it for who?
But let me ask you a quick question. Cryptocurrency. Could do a whole show on that, but that's often used to avoid, government interference, I guess, and overreach. So there's efforts to get cryptocurrency as a similar level, I guess, with government oversight and so forth in our national finance system here, or do you think they're going to try to shut that down to prevent any kind of an end game around government oversight sort of thing to prevent that government Big Brother overreach?
Well, they don't. We're never told that it's for government overreach or for government oversight. It's to prevent fraud. It's to prevent criminal activity. It's to prevent money laundering, and that's absolutely legitimate. But how they go about it is problematic. I know there's been more than a handful of nations around the world that have considered or tried to implement digital currency, central bank digital currency in particular. And it's failed miserably because people don't want it. They finally realize that convenience comes at a high cost. One nation, I think it was Nigeria, about a year or two ago, they tried to introduce CBDC by taking a very interesting route. They reissued their currency, but instead of reissuing the same number of notes, bills, they said, no, we're reissuing a very small amount. And if you want to have money, then just use the central bank digital currency. It's available. People rioted in the streets. They do not want it. Government wants to be able to protect us against things that they have declared illegal, that many people want to be seen as illegal, money laundering in particular. But it goes on all the time. Having intimate control over everybody's finances, is it proportionate? Is it overkill? Does it actually look at where the problem is? Or do you focus on criminal activity that they already know about?
Yeah, is it going to stop things? And the criminals usually find a way to get one step ahead of the the good guys, right? Seems like that, an endless cycle. So with cryptocurrency, do you think it's ever going to be legitimized, I guess, in, big government circles, US, UK, Australia, China?
If anything, they will legislate its availability.
Okay.
If you want to use it, it's how the internet is being controlled now. More and more countries, including our own, are going to limiting access to the internet, limiting access to social media, requiring people to identify themselves, to be given allowed access, government-controlled access. To whose benefit, really?
Yeah. Well, I saw an article the other day. This gets into, more wild stuff, right? But under the ground, under the seabed, we have these big, massive cables, fiber cables and so forth that connect us across, the globe with the internet. And if those were actually cut, it would take a long time to repair. And then what happens to all the digital banking back and forth?
That's true. But
that
those cables those cables are being cut frequently now. I mean, we don't talk about it. No, a lot of people kind of went, "Oh, there's cables under the sea." Well, yeah, there was cables when it was copper wire. Before there was satellite, and there still is. There's cables under the sea.
Wow. Okay. Makes you pause. Selah, let's just think about this for a while.
Here's another facial aspect, though, a quickie, though, on those cables.
Yep.
It used to be governments. Now it is the likes of Google that install and control the cables. Yes. So the question is, we were talking before about trust in government. Is it better to have trust in government or in corporations? Or are the governments and the corporations working together? It's blurred. Wow. The lines have been blurred.
Yeah. This will make for a good novel somewhere, mystery novel. What about facial recognition technology these days? Of course, it's improved. It's wow. Who's using it? It's pretty accurate, isn't it?
Facial rec? Well, there's a couple different kinds, though. When I was invited to testify before a parliamentary committee, about the RCMP using facial recognition technology. It was very interesting. In preparation, I hosted a series of roundtables with people from across Canada, members of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada, of course, and other people in the privacy and access community, and one specifically for members of law enforcement, because they often talk differently amongst themselves than if there's civilians in the room. And I was invisible in the room. I was the host of it, but somehow I was invisible. So they were talking pretty freely. And it was remarkable to hear one after the other say, the facial recognition we use is mugshot. It's a mugshot database type. I understand what that is. It's, you get a grainy photo from a video camera and you stuff that into the system. It spits out 12 or 24 or, a selection of possible matches. And then a person actually has to look at the grainy photo and say, no, that doesn't match. That's close. That's really close. Human intervention. And that's important because a system can't do a lot of what humans can. The cops in the room, one after the other, couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that there is such a thing already in use in other jurisdictions, live facial recognition. That as you're walking along the street, going into a shop, going into a sports stadium, going about your lawful conduct, you are being identified by the authorities. I personally resent that everybody is treated as a criminal who just hasn't been identified yet. It's terrible. There is a reason for it. I understand it, to protect everybody from aggressive conduct at a football game. The NFL actually has this in place in every stadium.
Wow.
It's going on. Is it accurate? Not necessarily a whole lot more accurate than before, because you look at the marketing material from a lot of the tech companies and the AI companies, and they're saying how wonderful their technology is. And then you look behind the scenes, like the Wizard of Oz, you pull that curtain back, and they're acknowledging that it's nowhere near where it was supposed to be, where they envisioned it would be by now. And even if it's a small number of false positives, when you're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of people, it's a lot of people that are affected.
It is, yeah. Are governments or corporations using this technology to geo-track people? Where are you going to be tomorrow? And they can follow you, that sort of thing, and trace you. Is that sort of thing happening as well?
It is, in ways that a lot of people would be very surprised, are very surprised. I was in Ottawa at another one of these hearings, and there was somebody in the room. He was hanging around till the end of the meeting. He wanted to talk to me, and he said so. He was the right-hand man for one of the ministers, and we were chatting, and I said, well, how do you feel about the facial recognition, the live surveillance going on? And he pointed, he said, well, there's cameras in the room here. I said, no. Not video cameras. I'm talking about the system that has been installed in the parliamentary precinct that determines, the artificial intelligence assesses whether you are carrying something that could be construed as a weapon, or where you are going in the building, if you cross this threshold or that, and it tracks your every movement. And he looked at me with this deer in the headlights look. He was horrified. Here's another one. You take an Uber in Calgary and in many other cities, the exact time that you called for the ride, the exact time that you are collected, the exact time that you are dropped off, the precise geolocation, latitude and longitude, has to be reported to the city.
Wow.
In some places, it's not a big deal if it's a lot of apartment buildings, but places like Calgary, Lethbridge, so many cities in Canada and around the world are largely single-family residences. And through the census, the city knows how many people of what age live there. And through tax they can amalgamate all this information and determine that at this time of this day, I called for a ride, was picked up, and was taken to that address, which is a church, a mosque, a synagogue, an abortion clinic, a political party's office.
Too much information for my liking.
And what do they do with that? What assumptions are made
exactly.
about us? That's the problem.
Quick question. When people, just on their phones, use retina scans, that sort of thing, or fingerprint information, should we be trusting who gets that information and where it goes and what's done with it?
If it is local on your phone, I'm less concerned about it. Problem comes in where something happens, and we've seen this on TV and it actually works, where if they get your fingerprint, it's pretty easy actually to make a duplicate of your fingerprint and use that to open your phone. Or say, hey, is that your phone? And there it is, it's open. How do you protect against that? At least if you're using a password, you can change your password. You cannot change your biometrics that easily.
Okay. So when I look at all this here, I'm running out of time here, but any thoughts, is it worth saying, speaking up, as you say, that's a big part of this, to our government at various levels saying, I'd rather stay with the old-fashioned paper system? Yay, nay? Is that doable?
I think it's important because the people in government are as aware or ignorant about all of this as everybody else. I mean, I live this, and I have for years and years and years. Most people don't. As I say, they are concerned with their own area of expertise, their own concerns. Speak up, and not just at election time. Get in touch with your elected representatives. Get in touch with your constituency association and say, this is on my mind. I want this.
Okay. Wow, this is super important stuff. We need to talk to our politicians, our friends, and do what we can to protect our privacy. Thank you so much, Sharon. Sharon Polsky, again, president of the Privacy and Access Council of Canada. Check out all the podcasts here at WizeUp.ca. Tell your friends. You can also listen at app.corcoplus.com. God bless.